Hey, what's up, Street Talks? Eric from the Eric from Street Photography blog. So, want to share another rando turbo thought with you. So, this is the basic notion. It's called the Art of Cross Pollination. So, I've talked about this on my blog in the past, but the basic notion is this: if you want to discover more artistic, creative inspiration or motivation, don't just look within your own specific domain in your own field. Strive to look outwards towards other forms of art and creativity. So for example, I'm super inspired right now by like comic books, manga, other forms of visual arts and visual storytelling and visual novels, especially the movie 300. Then I discovered Frank Miller's comic book of 300, which is amazing, and then I discovered Sin City and so forth. And so even looking at the Sin City comic book by Frank Miller, I am so inspired because looking at all of his asymmetric compositions, like a little stuff that's off-centered, kind of getting that film noir. And I've also discovered that I prefer to look at comic books or graphic novels much more so than movies, because for me, actually, movies are a little bit too slow. I could read really fast, and also visually, I could intake information really quickly. So with visual novels, I could like skim stuff super duper fast, and I could find inspiration outside the frame. So even one thing that I think comic books are really good at is that there are so many different ways that you could tell a story, and you could add quote boxes in different ways. You think about the arabesques and stuff like that. And actually, something that I didn't really think about too much is generally I love high contrast black and white, and even these videos you see that I'm making high contrast black and white. I never really made the connection between doing these kind of videos and think about film noir in general. And even my photography, I think it tends to be much more like low key, like quite literally low key, making photos a little bit darker, a little bit more sinister. And just even a philosophical thing, I think, is in making photos which look aesthetically darker, it actually brings out more joy and happiness in life. It's kind of like this Nietzsche's notion of the Dionysian, is that it's only within the deepest, darkest tragedies and the pain and suffering where we could discover the deepest levels of joy, happiness, and thriving and so forth. And so even when I watch tragic plays or movies or books or stuff like that, the basic notion is, in spite of all this tragedy and pain and suffering, life is still so beautiful and worth living. But anyways, so the art of cross-pollination is taking two different disparate ideas or concepts or things and combining them to discover new insights. So even nowadays, I don't actually look at much photography because I find photography pretty boring, but I love photography and I love making photos. Actually, instead, I try to discover more inspiration from my photography from other sources. So for example, listening to rap music or, graphic novels, comics, manga, films, or poetry or novels, or reading the Iliad or the Odyssey and stuff like that. I feel like there's so many forms of inspiration all around the world. And the problem about modern society is that it tries to make us hyper specialize in one thing. And the problem is, you end up just becoming like a naked mole rat, is that you can only squint and see things in one way. But certainly the world is much more vast and big, and to see how everything is interconnected by expanding your net of thinking wider and more disparate, you'll certainly become a much more epic thinker, a much more epic artist, and to see things like outside your box or outside your own narrow special field. And I think all of us, we should strive to become like these modern day Renaissance peoples. Like even studying Leonardo da Vinci, the reason why he inspires me so much is because he didn't just think of himself as an artist. He was also an inventor, an engineer. Like, he created war machines. He studied nature. He studied anatomy, physiology. There was no limit to his own personal curiosity. And even some cross-pollination that Leonardo da Vinci discovered was when he was like, I don't know which way it went, but then he was like studying World wind patterns in the water, right? Like how the water goes like that. And he discovered, wow, actually when I'm drawing women's hair, I could actually do the same pattern. Or, even Kanye West, right? One of his favorite films of all time is Akira, the classic Japanese one. And he's like, oh, all of my color palettes and stuff like that, it's inspired by Akira. And even his film, the music video to his rap music video, Stronger, is actually based on the Akira notion. And, even Kanye loves Lamborghini, so he's like, all the Yeezys I design is essentially like Lamborghinis for your shoes. So realizing that the world is so full of richness, so filled with visual imagination, is that there's so many great things in the world that we could kind of discover and find inspiration from. And it's a little bit unfortunate that we tend to just kind of sucker ourselves into thinking of just like one thing or another, instead of just like fully exploiting the personal maximum of all these visual sources of inspiration that we got. And I think just kind of give yourself the freedom and the courage to think about life on your own, and to take all your different crazy ideas and throw them all together. It's everyone wants you to just be a predictable something. Like, people want to put you inside boxes, right? Because people don't want to put you inside boxes because people are bad people. It's just most people think pretty basic, is that they cannot think of terms of complexities or whatever. Like, even thinking about Eric Kim, it's like, oh, Eric Kim's like a street photographer. Da, da, da. Yeah, I am, but I'm also a blogger, I'm also a teacher, I'm also a philosopher, I'm also a visual artist, I'm also a poet, I'm also a powerlifter, and there's like a quadrillion things that I'm interested in. And I would actually say, this is just practical entrepreneurial advice, is that it's good for you to start off being specific in a certain niche or genre, but still discover new forms of inspiration by cross-pollinating different ideas. And ultimately, at the end of the day, don't stay specific within one genre or one focus. Is that allow yourself to become as multifaceted, multivariated as possible. And the more you expand your outlook and the more you encompass all forms of art, the more you can thrive. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace out.